Good morning. How is everyone? Welcome to all right. Welcome to Passion, Purpose, and Possibilities on this beautiful Friday morning. Hope everyone's doing well. Hope you're having had a great week. Still having a great week. Week's not over yet. Brought to you by KennyIngersollTV.weebly.com. Oh, big announcement today. First off, love to see you in the chat. Love to see you. Say hi. Say what you're doing right now. And I'd like to know what you're doing over the weekend. What are you doing this weekend? Doing anything fun? You working? Going out of town? Got family over? What are you doing this weekend? So, but big announcement. Sorry, I'm just pulling it up here for a second here. Very excited. If you've seen my page or been following me on Facebook or whatever, then you'll have seen my comments about a book. We got a collaboration coming up. Collaboration effort in the process. 5-part series called 100 Ways to Eat a Sandwich. And this is an image of the cover. So it's a 5-part series. Part 1 is just about wrapped up as far as content gathering. So part 1's about done. We have space open for part 2 and part 3. If you're interested in what that looks like, being able to collaborate with us and be a co-author contributor, let me know. Message me, hit me up on Facebook. So we're working on part 2 and 3, and then parts 4 and 5 will come down later. So very excited for this. Looking forward to it. Got a lot of great people already lined up to be with it. Some great influencers, great authors. So really excited for that. So awesome. If you have any questions, hit me up. I'll be posting more about it on my Facebook page and my Instagram. And so you can look for it there, find more details there. Awesome. But today I'm really excited for our special guest. We have Kellan. Let's bring on Kellan. Kellan, how are you?
Kellan is outrageous. How else would I be?
Oh, I like the sound of that. So, tell us about Kellan. Who is Kellan? What is Kellan outrageous about?
Well, I start every day with a long morning routine or ritual. And like when I say long, 2.5 to 3 hours. And the reason that I do is because we all have the opportunity to choose who we are in the world. And what I mean by that, it might sound silly or a little woo-woo, but what I mean by that is we often, in fact, most of the time just get up and do whatever's handy in the day, like whatever, get up, see the news, take a cup of coffee or do whatever, instead of intentionally planning who we're going to be. And I've learned in all my years and experiences that intentionally deciding who I'm going to be today and then leaning into that all in is the way to get the most done, have the most fun, and have a powerful day. And so I did that today and every day. And one of those things was thinking about talking to you.
That's awesome. And I hope those were good thoughts you were thinking about talking to me.
They were good thoughts. I have a commitment this year to myself to help 10 million people to discover, develop, and serve with their divine gifts. And I'm all about that. And I have these kinds of appearances, books I'm writing. I've written 16. I'm in the middle of 6 more, podcasts of my own, and other things that I do to try to help people realize who they really are and what they can really have in their lives if they want to create it.
That is awesome. And you've pointed out a few good things already that I want to hit on pretty hard here. You mentioned that we choose what we have in life. And so often, and myself was included in this, that we thought what we had was outside of our control. And there are some things that are outside of our control. But it took me so long to realize how much power I was giving away to others or to circumstance or to conditions. How did you realize that you had that power, and how did you take that back and turn that into creating what you wanted for you?
So that's a fabulous question, and it's maybe at the heart of how you control your life. It took me a long time, and I was slow. I lived most of my life struggling with depression, feeling I wasn't good enough, not ever talking to anyone, not getting help, and trying to do what I thought I was, quote, supposed to do based on either societal norms or other expectations, like make a lot of money, get a lot of stuff, be important, have this, have that. And I was successful at that. I made a lot of money. I had a lot of stuff, but my heart was miserable. And I was truly living a living kind of rotten example of doing all the things you're supposed to do and being miserable about it. When I was 52 years old, after I'd lived for 35 years like that, I left home when I was 17. So for 35 years, I lived this roller coaster of creating big success, feeling unworthy, destroying it, creating it, feeling unworthy, and up and down, until something dramatic happened in 2007, 14 years ago, to change all that. So I was slow in learning that the truth that you just said, which is I don't control the weather, the economy, earthquakes, stuff like that. I don't. What I do control every minute is how I choose to see, interpret, and react to those things, and therefore create life with my own power. Right? It can snow outside and I can say, oh, the day sucks because I can't X. Or it can snow outside and I can say, yippee, I get to go ski. Like I can choose to have a good day or bad day no matter what's going on outside. And that realization, as simple as it sounds, is the key to unlocking having joy every day, no matter what's going on around you. And I didn't learn that until later in life. Even though I had all the trappings of success, I was unhappy inside.
Yeah, and it's funny how often we hear those cases, whether firsthand, secondhand, through the media, whatever, of people that on the outside look rich and famous and happy and life is wonderful, but on the inside they're absolute miserable mess.
Well, in my case, I was married and divorced 3 times. That was a mess. I had bouts with addiction and I'd been in and out of rehab. So when I say miserable, it wasn't just some hypothetical thing. I was seeking refuge in all kinds of places that only create more misery. And blaming, my upbringing and my mom used to discipline me as a kid with discipline that today would be felony child abuse. She used to beat the crap out of me. Okay, that is a true fact. How long I let that control my being, my thinking, my life, my creativity is my choice. And that lesson is something I didn't learn for decades.
Yeah. And I like how you brought up snow a minute ago as one of your examples, and something I've been um, working into my coaching material and stuff, and just my own analogy. I'm a big analogy guy. Is you may hate snow, and if you see snow, but that doesn't mean you have to leave the door held open and let the cold air in. Metaphorically speaking, you know, the what's happening on the outside does not have to affect what you do on the inside. You observe it, you see it, you recognize it, and you adjust accordingly how you choose to.
That's true, and it's you say it, I say it, and it sounds simple, and it is. I'll give you an example, and this actually happened to me as I started working after the divine intervention that changed my life in 2007. I was married and divorced 3 times, and as part of that divine change, I was introduced to another woman who was probably the only sane woman I'd ever known. But she and I got married in a sort of miraculous thing, which is another whole story. But anyway, one of the days we were talking and she said something to me, and one of the manifestations I had of this sort of depression was I assumed everything was sort of an attack on me. I heard everything as I did something wrong, and so I would react accordingly. So she said something to me one day, and I don't even remember what it was, but I said, "Why are you angry with me? Why do you attack me?" And she said, "No, I didn't mean that." And said, "Whatever." And I was frustrated, and I said, any rational being, Kenny, if anybody outside saw what you said, they would think this was unkind and an attack." And she said, "Well, I didn't mean that." So I went and sat down for a minute, and I thought to myself these simple words. Okay, what I'd said to her is, well, what else could that mean in that sort of negative tone? So then I sat down and I said the words again. What else could it mean? And I took the drama and emotion out and asked, what else could it mean? And then I had a picture, since we're talking about snow, of a ski place I used to have season passes to in Banff, Alberta. And there's a ski lift that runs up one side to a mountaintop, and it looks over a valley on the right-hand side. And there's another ski lift that runs up another mountaintop, and it looks over essentially the same valley, but from on the left-hand side. And from the 2 lifts, the valley looks completely different, even though it's the same valley. And all of a sudden, in considering that moment, that picture came to me, and I realized simple words: there is another mountaintop. And so then I said, well, what else could that mean without the drama? And I had a visceral experience, just like you described. I realized that the words could mean whatever I choose to have them mean. And in that moment, the entire framework of all this interpretation about how life was just sort of crumbled and liberated me from the idea that there's only one way to think about things. I truly had the experience of seeing things from a different mountaintop. And that was a gigantic revelation. And it's simple. There is another mountaintop. And that is true for every single situation. There's another way to think about it. There's another way to look at it. And that way might not only be more helpful, it might even be more true, more accurate, more creative, and more delightful. And just choosing to experience that is the key to unlocking that thing that you said, which is how to view something differently.
Yeah, perspective is huge. And those mountaintops will change from what I found for every situation
Mm-hmm.
and for every person.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we may be talking about the same similar scenario, whatever that may be, but your mountaintop will be different than my mountaintop.
Completely. And sometimes people say something like this. They say, well, we don't see the world the way it is. We see the world the way we are. And we say it like it's some kind of an indictment, like there's something wrong with us. Well, the lenses you have through which to view the world come from your past experience, and the lenses I have come from my past experience. So I only have the lenses I have, and that's not an indictment. That's just a fact. The liberation comes when finally internalizing the truth that you have a different set, and yours are true, completely true, because that's what you understand and know. So it's not an indictment, it's a fact. And the liberation is, oh, there is another set. I wonder what those look like.
Exactly. Another set. And
Yeah.
I like the eyeglass thing, and I picture binoculars. If you're looking through a set of, $3 binoculars, you're gonna have a totally different view than if you're looking through a $500 set of binoculars.
Absolutely.
Um, I I love that, and I've been learning that so much lately, and it's like a fire hose of knowledge, and then the more I learn, the more I find out or I'm butchering this phrase. The more you know, the more you realize how much you don't know, or something like that. However that saying goes.
I don't know exactly how it goes either or who it's attributed to, but it's true because I'm 66. I didn't even wake up to some of the things that I'm learning and take responsibility for creating my own reality until I was 52. So I was slow, and I love, the name of your podcast, Passion, Purpose, and Possibility, because that's all I'm driven by today. I only do one thing. When people look at my calendar and schedule and they see how crazy busy it is, they think, are you stupid? And the answer is no, I'm in love. I'm in love with my life. I'm driven. My goal this year, 2022, is I'm going to help 10 million people discover, develop, and serve with their divine gifts. And I just was talking to somebody else this morning, and he said, well, how are you going to do that? And I said, I have no clue. I have some ideas and I'm doing a bunch of stuff. And in fact, right after this, I'm on another podcast with Kenny, and he's one of the ways. And then that guy invited me to speak to a group that he runs. And I said, see, you're helping me. There's 25 more people that are in your group that I get to help. And so he laughed, and so the answer is, I got passion. I live it. I breathe it literally from first breath when my eyes open and I dive into my day with absolute boundless joy because I said so. Not because of the weather, not because of anything anybody else did or didn't do, but just because I decided to.
I love that. You're taking back that control from outside circumstances. I love
Fiercely and furiously and every minute. This is my life. I've got the levers, and I'll be darned if I'm going to give them to anybody else.
Oh, I love that. I love that. You mentioned 10 million people. And you mentioned also that someone asked you how you're going to do that, and you said you have no idea. How did you come up with 10 million? Did you go around, what number do you think I should get? Well, what do you think about this number?
No, I said 1 million and then felt like it was too small, so I said 10. And the reason I picked it is because I just felt like it. And then I'm going to lean in and live into that purpose. I have a podcast like you do. It's got 600 and something episodes. It's a daily podcast. I have a YouTube channel. I coach people. I've got clients around the world. I belong to an AI networking platform called Lunch Club, which introduces you to people around the world. I belonged to that for a year. I speak at virtual summits. I spoke at 4 last year. I've got 3 lined up for this year, and actually 3 of them, I've got 4 lined up for this year, and 3 of them are in person. So that's going to be fun now that we get to go somewhere again. And so I don't know exactly, but when I say I have no idea, I know the things that I'm trying. I've written 16 books, and I'm in the middle of 6 more. I just finished one titled Forgiveness, a journey of courage to a place of freedom and power, and it'll be out in a month or so. So I've got a bunch of stuff I'm doing, but I don't know exactly how that's going to translate into the 10 million.
I love that. And it's so freeing when you realize that you don't need to know every step along the way.
I find it's faster if I don't have to figure out every step. I find it's faster if you trust and lean into your intuition. I find it's faster if you meditate every morning and just listen for intuition and lean into that and live in a more guided way rather than try to figure it all out ahead of time. To me, I get in the way all the time when I do that.
Yeah, I end up overanalyzing and coming up with way more what ifs than if I'd have just done it, I'd have been a lot further along, sort of thing.
I totally love that and agree, because I can't know everything. And if we all lean into the truth that we're created on purpose, that we have gifts and talents, and that we all feel this yearning to help. People say, I like to help other people all the time. I went to a youth program thing at my church last night. I volunteer in my church in the youth, the young men. I do some stuff with that. And last night there was a career night. And the 3 people that spoke to the youth, it was the young men and young women last night. It was a firefighter and a policeman and a surgeon who happened to be in our congregation. And they talked about, They answered questions, and one of the questions was, why did you choose this thing? And the first words out of the firefighter's mouth was, ever since I was little, I had this yearning to what? To help people. And in his life experience, that seemed to be the way that he could do that most. We all feel that yearning. So if we'd stop overanalyzing, overthinking, which I did all the time, and just lean in and trust those feelings and just go do, instead of operating from fear, operate from trust, we'd get more done, have more fun, and get our goals faster.
Absolutely. And then you find opportunities along the way.
They're all over the place.
Yeah, they're all over the place. I use the analogy. Let's see here. Let me just grab this real quick here. I'll use the analogy of, like, with money. I got some fake money I use in some of my trainings that we talked about getting in our own way, and this ties along with, like, mindset, not just with money, but in opportunities and stuff. If you have a quarter and you hold it so close, you're so focused on that quarter that you can't see the $100 bill sitting out here. You're getting in your own way. You're overanalyzing. You're so focused on this little teeny or whatever. And like you said, you started with a million, but you thought that was too small. And I feel very strongly that if you would have stuck with that, you would have missed some of the opportunities that you've been a part of.
I am certain you're right, and I don't even know which ones, but I have chosen. Like when things happen in life, we can always say that was good luck, or we can say that was coincidence, or we can choose to say that was a blessing and be grateful. No one tells you which way to feel. But my discovery is when I choose to say that was a blessing and experience gratitude, more crap happens that's good, more good crap, not bad crap. And so I just choose to look at everything as a blessing and an opportunity instead of a coincidence or luck.
Absolutely. I want to jump over to your podcast. You mentioned that, and you host a podcast as well, and you talked about your books and stuff. The Ultimate Life podcast, and then you also help people with getting to your ultimate life. And I think we've been talking about that a little bit, but tell us a little more about your podcast. When did you start that? How did that come about?
That's a hysterical story. At the beginning of the pandemic, in 2 years ago this month, when the lockdowns were first, uttered out of people's mouths, and the number of cases in COVID in Italy were going way up. They were exploding, and Italy was the hot spot. And maybe for 5 minutes, we thought, oh no, this is the end of the world. We're going to all die of some fungus. Somebody called my wife, who's my business partner and the love of my life, and her name is Joy, and she is my joy. But anyway, somebody called her because they knew that I do motivational speaking and speak at conferences and this and that and the other, and they were looking for something because of the lockdowns, right? And he asked her, does Kellan have a podcast? And we didn't. But my wife said, yes. And then she came downstairs and said, we have a podcast. So in April, it'll be 2 years next month, 2 years ago, I started a podcast, and it's titled Your Ultimate Life. And it is a daily 15-minute podcast. So we're in episode 600 and something. We'll be to 730, which is 2 years pretty soon. I think we missed a few days somewhere in there, but we're getting pretty close. And the premise is really simple. You can create whoever you are, you can create your ultimate life. And I define it a certain way, a life of purpose, prosperity, and joy that you create by serving with your divine gifts. So that's how it started, and it's on all the platforms and all that jazz. And it's a 15-minute daily conversation about how to create your ultimate life. That's awesome. How it started, and that's what it is.
and that's awesome, and it's awesome that your wife is your business partner and stuff, because I think of the Clydesdale horse analogy with that, and just having that person support. My wife is the same thing for me. She's a behind the scenes force that's driving me. It's like, honey, I don't want to go do it anyways. In the loving manner that wives are very good at saying things like that and stuff. But I love it, and I love how you. Sorry, I just drew blank for a second.
That's all good. We do that and it's okay. That just means something's better coming.
But I love how you started that, and you just jumped into it. You didn't get on social media. What do you think? What do
I love that. I never do that. I believe and trust, and this is one of the things I teach, and I'm sure you do to your clients too. Look, the intuition that you receive is for you. You don't need a group of approval. You don't need anyone's approval. You don't need anyone to say yes. You don't need anyone to say that's a good idea. If you have intuition and you cultivate that intuition, which is one of the things I encourage people to do through meditation and reflection and spending time learning to love yourself deeply and trusting that thing, develop your connection with your higher self or the divine or whatever you want to call it. Listening and leaning into that is your greatest source of inspiration and creativity, not some poll and approval and likes and shares on social media.
Absolutely, and it takes away from any pressure or quote unquote standards and stuff.
One of the fun things that you come to realize finally when you take control of your own life is me, we don't need anyone's approval to be what we want to be. And I'm assuming we're trying to do good. I'm not talking about people doing bad stuff or weird stuff. You don't need anyone's approval. You don't need anyone's permission to declare yourself to be a light, a helper, a beacon. You can just go do good stuff. You can just decide to go serve and be a blessing. Like I don't need anybody's approval. One of the things in my morning rituals, I have a long set of statements that I remind myself are my guiding star. And part of it is, I am a beacon of light. I am a vessel of love. I am a conduit of power. So when I say those words and I say them slowly and I look in the mirror and I get connected with that, I don't need anybody's permission. And I don't need to know how I'm going to do that today, but I do get to ask myself, okay, if I'm a beacon of light, a vessel of love, and a conduit of power, how is that thing going to show up in this conversation or in this interaction? And with that question, ideas come. Well, if I'm a beacon of light, a vessel of love, and a conduit of power, then I would do this and I would say this. And that drives behaviors and ideas and thoughts that wouldn't come otherwise.
Right on. And it, like you said, your intuition, it's going to come, and what you thought might have been in the plan might change because something better, just like you said a minute ago.
It does all the time. It's not maybe, it's real life. It does every day. Some new thing comes, some opportunity comes. The guy I just talked to just before the opportunity to visit with you, Kenny, came to me on a platform called Lunch Club. Lunch Club is an artificial intelligence platform. And if you want to meet people, it's kind of cool. I've been on it for about a year, and it uses AI to match you up with people to chat with. It's like virtual networking. But anyway, I didn't know if I was going to get a chance to talk to him because you had asked for this hour and I'd said yes to you, and he was scheduled for this hour. So day before yesterday, I put in there and asked him if he could do it an hour earlier, and he didn't get back to me. And he didn't get back to me. And then literally 5 minutes before the hour before this hour, he saw it and he said, okay, I'm available. So I jumped on. But if I hadn't asked and I hadn't been monitoring that opportunity, I would have missed it. And then we would have rescheduled maybe. And because I got on that thing, then I got to meet him. He's really interested in some of the books that I wrote. And he invited me to speak to 25 other people in April, Saturday, April 16th, because he runs this group called Saturday Conversations. And so that opportunity happened because I said yes. And I said yes again. And I said yes again. So that's an example, real life today.
That's awesome. And that's something that I learned doing my show here is I don't have a script. I don't know where the conversation is going to go. We had a few little tidbits that we were kind of topics we based the conversation on as a start and stuff. But, the conversation goes and we just say yes. I don't know what I'm going to say next day. But the opportunities that have come because of it and the growth that has come because of it is irreplaceable.
Totally agree. Totally love that.
And I do remember what I was going to say a minute ago when I drew a blank. So
See, I knew that'd come back.
I love it. You talked about serving people. In your podcast and stuff, you talked about helping people serve by utilizing their divine gifts.
Mm-hmm.
How do you define their gifts? Because so many people so often, well, I'm not a doctor, I'm not a lawyer, I'm not an actor, I'm not a. And they think there's these specific 10 gifts or whatever, but there's so much more.
Well, here's what I think. If we all were the same thing or the same 10 things, number one, there'd be too many of those. And number two, all those other things, communicators, teachers, lovers of people, people who give service, people who care, people who go out of their way to strengthen and lift and bless, all those things would be missing. I have a brother who is a doctor. I have another brother who is an attorney. I have another sister who's a PhD university professor. She's retired now, but she was elementary education. And I was none of those. I was in business for a long time and did some other stuff. But even though I had a 30-year career and I had executive positions in the C-suite, big dog, yip-de-doo, nothing in that realm, including all the money and everything else, compares to the joy that I feel every day by being a beacon of light, a vessel of love, and a conduit of power to encourage people to find and lean into their divine gifts. I think of coaching as being in the people encouragement business. And I can't think of a better business I'd rather be in. Thank you very much.
I love it. And it's so true. The world would not be the same without those other gifts. I was listening to some podcasts before, and Ed Mylett, he's
Mm-hmm.
he's one of my go-tos for podcast stuff. But he says you can have the gift of being a good listener, the gift of a smile, the gift of a shoulder to cry on. And I'm like, holy cow, there's so many other gifts that we don't even think of, as gifts. And yet many times they're more valuable than the degrees.
A million times. You think of the great influencers in history, whether you're a Christian or other kind of religion, you think of Buddha and you think of Christ, and none of those show PhD after their name. They gave the gift of love. They gave the gift of listening, of kindness, of encouragement, of compassion, of teaching. Those are the ones that lift humanity to a higher place.
Absolutely. I love that. And it's one of the reasons why I started this show, is to share my gift and another opportunity and platform for others, such as yourself, to share their gift with more audience.
I love it. And I want to acknowledge you, Kenny, for the work, because a podcast, whether it's video or audio or both or whatever it is a labor of love. And you put in a lot of time and effort and energy, and you don't sell podcasts really. So it's not about big cash. It's just a labor of love, a choice that you've made to add good to the world. So I want to acknowledge you and honor you for that work and that gift that you're giving to all your listeners.
Thank you. I appreciate that and reciprocate. Awesome. If people wanted to learn more about what you do, your coaching, your speaking, your podcast, where could they find you?
So here's the fun thing about having a weird name like Kellan Fluckiger. I can't hide. So as long as you spell my name right, you can find me anywhere you want. I'm on LinkedIn. I'm on Facebook. I am on YouTube. I am on Amazon with books and my podcast. The podcast is everywhere. So all you have to do is spell my name right. If anybody says to me, gee, Kellan, I went and looked for you and I can't find you, there's only two possibilities. One, you're lying, you weren't looking, or two, you spelled my name wrong. So I can't hide.
And tell me if I've got this right.
That is exactly right. KELLANFLUCKIGER. KellanFluckiger.com. Absolutely.
Perfect. I for those listening, I want to encourage you to reach out to Kellan, you know, and get a hold of him. He's got some great stuff to share. Kellan, if someone wanted to start their own podcast or start speaking or start leaning more into their divine gifts, what would be a couple tips you would give them?
The first one is start now. And so many people think, well, I have to get clear. I don't have clarity. I'm not clear. And I cringe every time I hear that. And I even created a little poem, and it sounds like this. Clarity is overrated. It is not found. It is created. And what I mean by that is you'll find your clarity if you just start doing. Look at what's in front of you, an opportunity to lift, to bless, to smile, to serve. If you want to learn how to do a podcast, Google, how do I start a podcast? There's 1,000 tutorials that don't cost anything or don't cost much about how to do a podcast. If you want to get social media strategy, if you want to write a book, there are hundreds of places to learn to do that. It is almost never that we don't know what to do. Instead, it is we don't do what we know. We have a story. I'm afraid it won't be good enough. Maybe I'll suck. Somebody will laugh at me. And we get infected by what I call the WITOT fungus, WITOT, and it stands for what I think others think. Who cares? I am feeling deprived because I don't see your coolness. So go be you all in. And if you stumble, so what? So have I. So's Kenny. Big deal. Get up and get after it again. Start today. So tip number 1 is start right now. And tip 2 is remember, it's really not about you. It's about who can I help. So when I teach coaches about how to close clients is one of the things that I do, because so many coaches, when it gets time to close the deal, have the money conversation and enroll the client, they freeze up, it gets weird, the conversation changes and all that sort of stuff. And the reason is because they've forgotten it's not about them. And they're engaged in their head in the idea of, oh, do they like me? Have I impressed them enough? And all this other nonsense, when really the only thing it needs to be is about how have I served them? And so that's just one tiny example of getting out of our own way by taking us out of the equation. How can I actually help solve this problem, move this forward? And people see and feel that. So start now, and remember, it's not about you.
I love that. Thank you for sharing that. And it's awesome, great tips to start with. And that's exactly one of the ways I started my podcast is how to start a podcast. And it's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. You're reaching out for help. So again, thank you for sharing that. Thank you for taking the time to be here. I really appreciate it. I'd love to connect more on more things later on. And everyone for tuning in. Thank you for taking the time to tune in, listen in, and remember to live your passion, fulfill your purpose, and explore those possibilities.